It was high fever, backaches, and then the breathing. And I just went downhill rapidly.
On March 31st, 2020, Donna Talla was diagnosed with COVID-19. Months later, the previously healthy Northern Virginia sales director still has not fully recovered.
Having COVID is like being caught up in a riptide and trying to get out of it. It's deadly, and it's very scary.
In the coming years, millions of Americans could be living with the long-term impacts of the coronavirus. And if history is any indication, the scale and newness of the COVID-19 pandemic presents new questions about what treatments insurers will cover and who, ultimately, will pay for what could be years of medical care.
Acquired immune deficiency syndrome is a terrifying and mysterious disease, and it's killing a lot of people.
The COVID-19 pandemic isn't the first time insurers have had to adjust to an emerging health crisis.
In the early days of HIV, when people were dying and there seemed to be no treatment, insurers would deny a lot of emerging treatments as experimental.
Sarah Rosenbaum has been working at the intersection of health law and policy for decades. She says there's a familiar playbook for how private insurers will likely respond to COVID-19.
We've seen this movie before. We let insurers design exclusions and limits.
Historically, there have been two primary ways health insurance companies manage risk. One is to limit exposure to high-risk patients by denying coverage to people with pre-existing conditions. The other is to set caps on the amount or scope of treatments through annual and lifetime dollar limits, limited in-network coverage, and stringent pre-approval authorizations, to name just a few. In 2010, Congress put an end to Option 1 with the Affordable Care Act, or the ACA. Its most popular provision was a ban on insurers denying coverage to people with pre-existing conditions. So, for example, no ACA-compliant plan can exclude someone who had COVID-19 from being covered. But the ACA does not prevent Option 2.
Insurers have a lot of latitude over the design of their coverage. There's nothing in the Affordable Care Act that says you can't continue to use various kinds of exclusions.
Insurers say these provisions are important to help manage their risk from the high costs and unpredictable nature of treating disease, particularly a novel, highly transmissible virus with unknown long-term health impacts. But with millions of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the US and numbers continuing to climb, things could get messy quickly.
Insurance companies can't charge you more under the Affordable Care Act if you have a pre-existing condition, but they can say, we're not going to let you go to an out-of-network doctor for this sort of treatment for this heart or lung condition that you have because you had COVID, and that could end up people have really high out-of-pocket costs to get that coverage.
Probably racked up over $125,000 worth in medical bills.
Talla has had to pay more than half of that out of pocket, although she is appealing some of the charges. With no end in sight to her post-COVID-19 ailments, she worries about the long-term financial impact.
It's very stressful when you have to deal with those bills just coming in day after day, and it could financially break me.
For their part, insurance companies, fearing the scale and length of the disease, worry about how the virus could impact their business.
Nothing has been on this big of a scale before. We've never seen so many people sick. Businesses, especially small businesses, are already struggling to keep their doors open. And if the long-term effects of COVID and its treatment causes insurance premiums to soar, we could end up at the same time with small businesses saying, I just can't afford to offer this health plan anymore to my employees.
That would spell trouble for both insurers and patients. In the US, only 30% of businesses with less than 50 employees offer health insurance. But losing those customers could be disaster for many of the nearly 900 private sector insurers in the United States. For patients, many of those who lose coverage could be eligible for Medicare or Medicaid, depending on age or income. The rest could buy insurance on the ACA exchanges. There's just one small problem.
The U.S. Supreme Court will take up a legal challenge to the Affordable Care Act,
the health care program on which more than 20 million Americans depend, and a program in even more demand right now because of the coronavirus pandemic.
In late 2020, the Supreme Court will hear the third major challenge to the Affordable Care Act.
If the Supreme Court does decide to either gut or obliterate that law, we could end up in a really dire situation where there's a lot of people in the middle of a global pandemic who don't have health care coverage.
But it's not just those with plans purchased through the ACA who would need to worry. The ACA's pre-existing condition mandate would also be struck down. That means anyone trying to buy private insurance who's had COVID-19 could be uninsurable.
If the ACA is repealed, we are totally back to the Wild West.
How this all plays out is anyone's guess. But as insurers and patients prepare for the rocky years ahead, we can be pretty sure about one thing.
There could be a lot of dispute between patients and the insurance companies over what forms of treatment are medically necessary.